Thank you everyone for joining us for the last panel of the conference. So we are here today to talk about cultivating future energy talent. Most of you may be aware that about 40% of the workforce is expected to retire in the next few years. So we have to find a way to replace them, and then we have to find a way to really get the people who are going to be able to understand these new technologies and work with them in the next 10, 15 years. So here with me today to talk about that, I have John Hua, the CEO of Analyst Electric Cooperative. Hi, John.
Great. Thank you. Glad to be here, Erin.
And next to him, we have Nancy Bui-Thompson. She's the board president for the Sacramento Municipal Utility District. Hi, Nancy.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And next to Nancy, we have Dan. Dan Smith is the VP of Electric Service Delivery for Austin Energy. How are you, Dan?
Very good. Thank you.
And then over there on the end, we have Julia Hamm. Julia is the president and CEO of the Smart Electric Power Alliance. Hi, Julia.
Good. Hi.
So I'm going to go ahead and let these folks do a quick introduction of themselves and why they're ready to talk about this topic. John?
Well, thank you, Erin. John Hua, CEO of Analyst Electric. We're a larger distribution co-op headquartered about 50 miles to the west of here for those of you that aren't local. We're a fast-growing utility. We love the co-op model, really seeing the co-op model do amazing things across the United States. Some 900 co-ops covering about 70% of our nation's land mass and serving about 10 or 12% of the nation's energy supply. We are very interested critically interested in making sure that we have the workforce to carry us into the future, to make sure that our model lives up to its expectations, and that we continue to earn high member satisfaction from our membership. So I'm really delighted to be here, looking forward to the conversation and sharing with our co-panelists. I also serve with Julia. I'm actually on the board of directors of the Smart Electric Power Alliance, and a wonderful organization there, and anxious to be on the same panel with Julia as well here. So thank you.
Great, thanks, John. Nancy?
Hi. Good morning, or almost afternoon. I'm Nancy Bui-Thompson. I'm an elected board member of the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, also known as SMUD. SMUD is our country's 6th largest public utility. We serve about 1.5 million constituents in Sacramento County. We have over 2,000 employees, and we like to consider ourselves one of the most progressive, future forward-thinking utilities. We're consistently ranked, I'm very proud of, #1 in the country by J.D. Power for customer satisfaction. And my day job, I'm director in the technology practice at Public Consulting Group. So I work with large-scale software systems and have been doing public sector health for about 15 years. I'm excited to be here because I want to know how to continue to attract more people of my generation to utilities. It's not always the top prospect. It's not always as sexy and cool as the Teslas and the Googles of the world, but we as a board are trying to make it be that way.
Yeah, good morning. Dan Smith. I won't repeat a lot of things about Austin Energy. I think you probably heard a little bit before. I will tell you about my group. I'm over the wire side of the business, the transmission distribution part of the company. I've got about 550 employees. Wonderful employees, very dedicated. I consider them heroes, the people that are keeping the lights on, but they're also progressing and transforming the grid to what we need it to be for customers, consumers, and really to power the economy. I'm still seething that my head's not up here. I don't know what happened there. But outside of that, I'm actually here to try to recruit some of John's people away. So I want to hear what he has to say. But actually, this is probably the single most important thing that I think we do as leaders is really recognize it's the cultivating this the talent and recruiting this talent. It's really what is going to make us get to the future we have to be at.
Good morning, Julia Hamm, CEO of the Smart Electric Power Alliance. We're a 25-year-old nonprofit that for the first 23 years we were focused on helping electric utilities understand solar energy specifically and how it fit into their business and the lives of their customers. Over the past 2 years, we've expanded our scope and rebranded, so we now are focusing on solar storage, demand response, electric vehicles, all of these emerging technologies that we've been talking about the past few days, and helping the electric utility industry make sure that this is a smooth and smart transition as we go through the process. I think in terms of this conversation about future talent, one of the interesting perspectives that I bring is that our membership, we have about 600 electric utility members and another 500 members that are technology companies, state PUCs and energy offices, really the whole ecosystem that's engaged in this conversation. So I have a unique vantage point to really understand both sides of the equation and sort of sometimes where those struggles are for talent between utility versus technology provider. But we obviously all need that great talent.
Great. So I think before we start getting into how to recruit, how to find the right individuals, we should address what are the changing needs of the workforce?
Sure. So, Erin, I'll jump in there. I think before we kind of talk about the changing needs, I think it's a good idea to talk about kind of where we're heading. From our perspective, our strategic destination is pretty clear. It's very simple: to earn high member satisfaction. Nancy mentioned J.D. Power. When you look at that across the United States, and there's a lot of ways to measure that measure of success, but there's about 5 areas that are really focused. Reliability, pricing, payment and interaction with the membership or the consumer. Is it easy? That continues on into areas of communications. As utilities, there's a lot of demands on us to communicate in very many different ways than we used to. And of course, one of the other areas of J.D. Power in terms of satisfaction is corporate citizenship. So our mission is to earn, and I emphasize the word earn, high satisfaction from our membership. When you go down through the organization and you look at how we do that, everything from asking our electric line workers to take on new technologies with a higher degree of precision, but also, by the way, don't slip on delivering on the brute capacity and strength of a 100-year network in terms of infrastructure and the way it was built. Our member service staff is, we've gone from measuring, I think, kind of just call volume on payments to now getting into very complex conversations, sophisticated rates, rate options, community programs that members might enroll in. So that has become increasingly complex. And as we go up through our organization, we've taken on a lot of specialty staff. So I think in looking at a very basic deliverable of earning high member satisfaction, the definition of that today for a utility, especially a co-op, it gets very specific, it gets very specialized. We have directors of grid modernization, cybersecurity managers, physical security managers. We have a whole array of new staff members, even legislative and regulatory with the changing kind of world around us. So I think what's very exciting for us is that delivering on our core mission of member satisfaction is becoming very well-rounded, very diverse, more retail in its focus, and I think it's an exciting time for the workforce.
And just to piggyback, we've realized as a utility that going after this small bucket of power engineers in this country to be at our utility is going to be very difficult. We look at our customer engagement as a whole model of both our customer and our employees. And so we at SMUD, we have decided to invest in our employees and in the community. We have a business development team that's all they do all day is work with the chambers of commerce throughout our region and on our own to attract and retain some of our country's best businesses. Our employees donate thousands of hours of years into our community to say, hey, SMUD is more than just the person or the company that keeps your lights on. And so we're looking at different types of employees. We have our chief customer officer here today. We have a strong media team. We had one of the worst, they say it's the storm of the century. It happened this year. Our online outage system went out. So what did we do? We all got on Twitter, Facebook, and had real-time responses to our customers. And so hiring different people that aren't typically part of the utility model, hiring strong communications teams, business development, outreach, small business, minority promoters. We see it's more than just the engineer and the lineman. It's a whole approach to our workforce that has to change because our customers are expecting us to be like an Amazon, to be as responsive. And you can't do that with the typical makeup of our utilities.
And I'd say, really starting at the 30,000-foot level, we've heard a lot this week about culture, and it all starts, in my mind, with that cultural shift. You have to be able to begin from the top, begin to shift the culture of the organization, again, whether you're a utility or some other type of business, to be able to attract the right type of talent into the organization. And especially, I think, as we start thinking about millennials and the retirements that you talked about and the younger generations coming into the industry, I'm sure we've all read many of the same articles that talk about how mission-driven the millennial generation is. And I think that's a great opportunity for utilities in particular to really reshape the messaging around the purpose of the utility, because there is a phenomenal mission behind the utility, but I'm not sure that utilities have historically been strong at communicating how important that mission is to the business and to the customers in the community. And I think the more that utilities can do that, the more we're going to begin to see millennials be attracted to working within the industry.
Right. Dan, you have anything to add?
Well, I think it is an interesting challenge that we're in too, because I think when you look at what we're called and mission to do, is we still have to provide reliable, safe energy to our customers, and now we've really added some really significant parts of really shifting into a very customer-centric and a very digital age. And so as a result of that, I think it's kind of a great reality that I'll admit I'm raising 2 millennials. I don't know them. I don't know about you. I just don't know my 2 millennials, but I do know I need to hire good, solid millennials to be able to reach other millennials. And so I think there's that aspect of just speaking to the comments about culture. But I do think one of the really interesting elements about it is it's also what's making us more attractive. And as people become aware that we're not the same old poles, wires, and transformer type company, we're actually much more in that consumer engagement. It's going to take a very diverse workforce to go do that. And, I need folks that somehow stand up here like Mark with Zpryme and somehow call us artists, artistry. I admit, my mind doesn't think that, It's still poles, wires, and look at all the grid modernization stuff. But anyway.
And I think it's also related to we've talked some this week about communicating the value of energy, the value of the utility to customers. I think we have to think about it in the same way with potential employees and talent. Because, yes, of course, safe, affordable, reliable, clean energy is all really important, and that's what we've thought about as the mission of the utility. But if you articulate it, I answered the question this morning that Christine asked about, what would you tell your 12 or 13-year-old self? I would tell myself, electricity is what makes everything else possible. And I think that that's the really compelling value proposition, the mission-driven piece that's going to get people excited. And then you can start talking about the innovation that's happening and the job opportunities and begin to really draw people in.
Yeah, I think one of the risks for utilities, we've got this traditional traditional system with a kind of very fundamentals and this wave of new technology. But in our workplace at PEC, we have really 4 distinct generations, as Julius, you kind of launched that conversation, from boomers and X and millennials and up to Z. And there's a risk there of we spend a lot of time talking about the new technologies and the new things that we need to solve and the business relationships and the new approaches. But there is a risk there of not being attentive enough to the core of the business and really. We had storms come through Austin just the other night, and our crews are out rolling, and we got folks getting line back up in the air and getting conductor in the ground re-energized. And so it's a really interesting time. I think it's a very challenging time within the workforce to be able to balance all that and make sure that everyone along the entire spectrum of our demographics within our employees is well engaged and understands how valuable they are to actually getting done what we get done right now.
And so to build on what you were just bringing up, how do we develop the current workforce, to be prepared for these changes?
I'll jump in and we'll defer to some others here in a moment. But from our perspective, I think, first of all, I think it's incumbent upon every organization and especially every utility to understand what are the demographics of your current workforce. What are the generations? How do you know right now within your workforce the breakdown as a percentile basis of folks in those different categories, and because they have preferences in how to be communicated with and what motivates them in terms of total engagement? Do you know by department, in your communications group, in your billing group, in your electric field groups, or in your technical and engineering groups, do you know by department what those breakdowns are in terms of the consistency of the organization? For us, we've done a number of things. We're focusing a lot on just kind of the wholesome mission and calling of Electric Co-op, but we've been very intentional the last few years about introducing workplace dynamics to do very comprehensive engagement surveys. And then once we have those surveys, we've been very specific and very open with our employees about the successes and the gaps, and there's plenty of both. And then on the gaps, we've been very, very specific with our departments. How are we going to solve these very specific gaps that were identified when we went out to the entire employee base and said, how are we doing? So,
from a SMUD perspective, we realized that waiting till the end and when people are ready to give us their resume is probably too late. So we have what we call a cradle to grave initiatives throughout our community. So we, as a utility, we sponsor curriculum in the classroom, so K through 12 education. we've partnered with Lawrence Livermore Lab, and we've created our own energy curriculum in the school districts that we give complimentary to all our teachers in the district. We provide training for teachers in our district to learn more about energy and utility practices. We sponsor contests in elementary schools where the kids from the classrooms compete with each other to see how they can use less energy. We put on several events throughout the year. I mean, our employees donate 15,000 hours of their personal time in our community, which is a lot for a 2,000 person company, because we feel that if you start them young, getting interested in energy and technology, they may not come to SMUD, but they might come to your utility, they might come to yours. But that investment needs to be made, and with our public school districts cutting back on just about everything, we have stepped forth and said, we will provide curriculum, we'll provide teacher hours for you. And then we bring it to high school. We provide high school scholarships. I know a lot of companies do college scholarships, but we realize getting them young, getting them early as they're deciding their college path, if we can get them enticed, let's start as soon as we can. We have summer internships both for, as I mentioned, high school and college. And we just started a new program that we award 15 scholarships to children school-aged, high school and college in our communities and schools to say, hey, we want to invest in you now. We want to invest in you early. And so we had our first class of scholarship recipients this past year. And so we hope by planting those seeds, planting those thoughts that energy can be cool, it can be interesting, and we want you to stay in our community. We love our community, and to be able to invest in our school children so early and to have that relationship, we've seen it pay dividends.
Yeah, I think I would add that I think leaders need to be leaders, and what I mean by that, I think that leaders, one of their primary objectives and goals is to recognize that they need to be, really cultivating that workforce and taking that as a primary focus for them. So I think that and quite honestly, I would even, go to some of the fundamentals. The most important thing that we do in expressing and demonstrating value for our employees is their safety, and really looking at it holistically, not just the line workers, but really the whole element of that. So I think that expresses care, but you got to live that value and really act on it. But I think that's a key aspect of really taking care of the people that you have. But then leaders need to also recognize their primary job is to really develop that workforce that's going to be able to accomplish the things that we have to go do. One of the things I'd probably go down to a lower, kind of the weeds a little bit, but I've seen this aspect of taking a technician to a technologist. And so a strategy we've seen is, linemen, for example, they work and they get to a point in their life that their backs are sore, and it's like, this is pretty labor work. In fact, many of them, when you think about their safety, it's probably good that they actually get out of climbing poles and all. It's time for them to do some other things. What I found is some of these are great technologists. You give them the right training, and they pick that up. They're not just people that know how to pull 795 ACSR or put transformers up on poles. They actually understand how to get into computers and manipulate things. They actually understand even enterprise-wide systems. What's so valuable about them is that they also know what it takes to get the job done. So then when you start to convey the technology that we have to do to deliver something different to our customers, to actually improve reliability and to operate with a higher degree of efficiency and business excellence, you've got an unbelievable asset, and they're invested. They know it, and they are really engaged. So I've got a handful of folks like that. You can't hire them, John, and they are that's what they are. It's a tremendous deal. I sat in a vault not far from here, distribution network vault, and a guy sat there and explained to me how this network protector worked, the communication system. And this guy at the same time was, doing heavy labor, rolling in transformers into this vault. But that's the type of future too, when we're talking about our internal folks and what we can do.
One of the great examples I heard, actually I apologize if the person who was talking to me about this is in the audience because I can't remember who it was, but I had a great conversation this week from someone from one of the utilities who was talking about one of their best tools to make sure that the current workforce is prepared is when there's a problem, is identifying a veteran in the business who is likely to be retiring soon, but really understands deeply the business, and pairing them together with somebody who is young and new within the company, and having them as a team solve the problem. And the solutions collectively that those two people or a small group of people like that can come up with has proven to be, the solutions have been so much stronger than only one of the two tackling the problem on their own.
Yeah. You know, Erin, to kind of build off of the SMUD lineup of the things that you all are doing, and I commend you for your support there of building the talent. And we've got a lot of similar programs from scholarships and otherwise. A couple of things that we've done in the last, that we've done as a tradition as electric co-ops. One is a national program called the Youth Tour, which actually there's a lot of young people that are really interested in energy policy and regulatory issues. And we go out to our membership every year with a contest for rising juniors and such to be able to apply for our youth program. We send a group of local students to Washington, along with actually thousands of other electric co-op youth representatives. They spend time in Austin learning about how the state government process works and how laws and energy intersect and regulatory issues. And then they go to Washington and they meet with our lawmakers in DC and spend some time also touring the city and the district and getting around and kind of just really getting a good feel for how the energy issues that we're dealing with are national, are global, but are also back very relevant at their local electric co-op. And I think that's helping to really connect some dots for a lot of our young members to understand really the bigger picture about energy policy and what it means here for us.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point. And so when we're talking about millennials, you know, at least in my experience, because I am a millennial myself, there's this idea that if you go to work at a utility or work in the energy industry, you have to have an engineering background or, you know, like a math-based background or something like that. But we need, you know, millennials from other backgrounds. How do you start to attract, you know, like the finance majors, you know, project managers, you know, artists, things like that? How do we start to attract them as well?
Yeah, the degree of precision I think that we're all executing at is increasing monthly, daily, and that is driving us, again, as I mentioned earlier, to some very specialized skills. I mean, just our communications team and the demands we're putting on that team in terms of being able to get the story about what an electric co-op is out to the membership. After all, these are our member owners, so they deserve to know everything that we're doing with the co-op and why we're doing it. Within the technical areas, I agree with kind of the transition to technologists. One of the things that we've seen recently is aerial inspection, drones. We've got a couple of employees now that are FAA certified. So that's just a new area that's just really emerged in the last couple of years that can provide tremendous value to our organization. So we're seeing a lot of refinement into very specific roles. We've added a strategy office in the last year and a strategy architect. These are not necessarily always tried and true traditional electric utility or even co-op roles, but we're finding that specialization is very essential for us to kind of to optimize where we want to get over the next few years.
For SMUD, what we try to be and we try to push in our community is that we're the best place you want to work. We are a government entity, so we cannot compete salary-wise with other utilities in our region or with the companies. And so what we've set forth to do is SMUD is the place you want to be because it's not just a job. Our employees give incredibly of themselves and their time. Our employees started their own nonprofit called Combined Charities, where they give over $400,000 a year, largely of their own money, to the community, because we want to say, this is a great job, you're doing interesting work, it's dynamic, it's changing, but we care about you more than just your 8 to 5. We care about your health, your family, and the community. And so we have on-site gyms, which I'm sure everybody else does, but you know, wellness programs, on-site gyms. We still have one of the few on-site daycares in our region. But we say there's more than just the job. It's what can we do to help you enjoy what you do from 8 to 5, but what happens after that? And how do we stay in the hearts and minds of our employees? Because they are our ambassadors. And so there really is not a day or an event that goes by that you will not see a SMUD employee volunteering their time at. And we have found that this is what attracts that next generation of leader that I know when I give, for example, I don't give blanket organizations anymore, I target. I love giving to Heifer International. I love that on my friends' birthdays, I donate the Joy Basket, which is 3 chicks and some seeds. I like knowing that my one little contribution helped a mother in Vietnam. And that's, I think, the difference now with our generation is we want more than just a job. We want a job that gives us passion and provides an opportunity for us to grow, but we're connected. We're connected to each other as employees, but we're connected to our community.
Yeah, I would add to it. We've recently, and I imagine a lot of companies do the Gallup Q12, and it's interesting, kind of building on what Nancy stated, was one of those questions, which I've always struggled with, is do you have a best friend at work? And it's like, well, my best friend's not. But the intent of that question really is ultimately to say, you have some people that you trust, that you're connected with, and all, and that's really relevant. And I think we're like Nancy in the city of Austin is that we do struggle to compete from a salary only perspective. So then it becomes a whole package. I think one part of that I've noticed is I've been a part of recruiting is listening to interested candidates. When I ask them a question, say, why are you interested in Austin Energy? They will equate it to things like our mission, things like the renewable energy type portfolio that we're pushing, our electric vehicle program. And I'm talking to somebody that's pursuing engineering. I'm not talking about somebody that's doing the customer energy solutions or something like that. It's very, very interesting from that perspective. And I think that does give us a clue to say, what are the type of things that you're doing that connects them to the whole, and really trying to convey that. And I think one other maybe program or strategy that we have that it needs to grow, but we've started it at least is just a leadership internship program. So when we hire a new grad, we're basically saying for your first 2 years, you're going to have 4 6-month assignments, and you're going to get the full flavor of different parts of the organization. And then afterwards, you're going to be placed in a role that you can grow and then develop. I don't know about you. I would have loved to have come out and that been my opportunity, right? I mean, it just I pretty much the only way I learn things is just by asking a lot of questions. I didn't get to move around a lot, so.
And in terms of attracting new types of talent into the utility business, I mean, none of us are HR experts, and we've been sort of joking about that. We're up here talking about these issues, but none of us are really experts on this. But I do think it requires rethinking the HR role within an organization, because what people traditionally think of as HR, today, we really need our HR people to be marketing people, right? It can't just be writing job descriptions and posting them in the old places we used to post them. It's about how do we go out and market ourselves as this great place to work using the right language, the right messaging in new, innovative ways. And I'm really pushing our team within, even though we're a small nonprofit, how do we proactively go out there and get our name out with groups of future potential employees, even if we currently don't have a position open. So it really is I think needs to be a little bit of a shift of how we think about the HR function within our companies.
Within our organization last year, we built within our SAP SuccessFactors environment, a kind of full-blown recruiting website. And sorry, Dan, but but what we have in there, actually, we've allowed our staff, our electric line workers, literally, some of the guys that won the Texas Rodeo for the line worker team, and to allow them, to be on video in that web space, and so prospective employees can come to our site and hear from me. That they skip through that quickly, and they go into some of the more interesting areas of the organization. Our cybersecurity manager, a quick video in there. They can hear from our cybersecurity manager about the IT role at PEC, but also our electric line workers, engineers, and other folks. And that was a quick way for us to make sure that they get really connected to what we're doing and kind of the unique difference of the Texas Hill Country and also PEC and just the co-op in general, so that as they're considering investing their time and their career and their talent into our organization, that they really get a really good look even before we even start the application process.
So we can do all these things to initially get our new employees at our organizations, but how do we keep them there after they are there?
Yeah, not easy. Yeah, especially not easy given everything that you hear being discussed at the conference for the last few days here. I mean, the industry has a vast and growing demand for talent. And we've got a lot of folks that are on the brink of retirement, and we are working through what are some of the smart ways to keep them around the organization longer and let them re-engage in new ways. But it's not easy. I think ours really goes back to that fundamental, just making sure we're asking the questions, our engagement surveys, and our employees, how do you feel? And then let's be very real about the problems that we might be encountering and how do we solve those. We've investing a lot in our facilities as well and making sure that our teams have the right tools. But that's a tough area, and I think it's going to be a tough area that we're all going to be confronted with for many years.
And part of it, I think, is just being honest with ourselves and acknowledging that younger generations have different career paths than historically what the utility industry has seen. So it's not realistic to expect that an employee is going to come in, that most employees are going to come in and be lifetime employees of the utility. So it requires a sort of shifting of the frame and thinking about how do we change the way we operate, the way we support our employees, knowing that many of them are going to choose to move on to something. Now, we want to keep them as long as we can and do all these things to make people want to stick around, but we also need to be realistic and real. And this is something, again, even as a small nonprofit, for a long time, every time somebody left, I was just so distraught, like, what did we do wrong that we couldn't keep them longer? And finally someone just said to me, Julia, you need to embrace the fact, like, it's a positive thing. Your staff members are getting these great opportunities to go work for SEPA member companies. And you should be cheering that and supporting that and saying that is a really positive outcome for the employee, for SEPA, for the industry. And so it was a really interesting sort of light bulb moment for me where we actually created, I forgot what we've called it now, but some sort of internal HR statement around sort of career paths, and that explicitly saying, like, success for SEPA is helping employees grow within SEPA or helping them grow into even bigger positions within the industry which support our mission.
I mean, I'll echo on that. I can tell you, so I work in technology. I've worked in consulting now for 15 years, and I get twitchy about the fourth year. I mean, this is me. I am one of those people that 4-year mark is coming up with me at my firm, and I start to go, is this really where I want to be? And we as a utility, as companies, have to realize that this is what people are transitioning to. This is, I'm going to spend for maybe 10 years somewhere, but then I'm going to move on and be okay with that. And so at SMUD, how we've tried to combat this is obviously having all these wonderful programs, but offering different work opportunities, as Dan had mentioned, and saying you don't have to just stay and die in your position. There are other positions. We have partnerships with senior members of the teams, incredible knowledge transfer. That's the biggest loss that we are feeling as people retire. There are decades of knowledge in their heads, and they're oftentimes not written down. So how do we pair them? How do we match them up as mentorship opportunities? So to open those doors to someone that may not have thought that, oh, this could be interesting for me. So we know that they will probably leave, but we can give them different, intriguing opportunities throughout their time at SMUD. We will have created a better energy workforce. We also look that not everybody comes with those management skills that you might need or those communication skills. So we have year-long management programs where you join a class of your fellow colleagues and you spend a year learning from our community's leaders, not just SMUD leaders, about how it is to speak effectively, to be able to hold yourself in tough situations, to tackle tough issues. And we bring the outside community in to train our managers because we want that perspective. And they spend the year together, and at the end they have a senior project, and usually it's energy efficiency related somewhere in the community. And so they're applying their skills that they've learned throughout the year to give back. And so we've had to come up with these different programs, but underlining is they're not going to stay and retire with us, but we feel that we've contributed to them as a person, that they can go forth and go to another energy entity, and that we gave them those SMUD values while they were with us.
So I'm going to ask one more question before I open it up for y'all to ask your questions. How do we prepare the upcoming workforce, the current workforce, for the IT-centric utility of the future?
Wow, that's a lofty challenge. We've developed some programs within our organization. One of them is leadership development, and we're on our 5th cohort now, 5 years in a row, where we've had prospective leaders in the organization that are self-identifying and enrolling and really pursuing within the organization the ability to grow their skills. I think when you look at the IT space, we need to take those kinds of models and be very specific about applying that in the IT arena. One of the things we've done, and just very basic, is make sure that all of our employee, everything that the employee does in terms of interacting with the organization itself is fully electronically, and making sure that, these are small steps that start to acclimate employees that may not have the IT skills or may not natively have the IT skills to start to develop those along the way. We're doing a lot of cyber training, everything from cyber classes and curriculum that are now required. In fact, we've taken our key performance indicators, which are everything from rates and reliability, but we've now included in that things like physical security training and specifically IT training and IT cyber training. We're running them through a lot of exercises. We're spending a lot of time in ramping up with new technologies and making sure that we're bringing in vendors and that we're having a lot of collaboration around our organization. We have a training department that is there to help our employees grow their skills. So there's a whole lot of work that is underway in our organization right now, but a lot more that we could be doing. And I think it's going to be a really large challenge for us as the use of various technologies is almost unlimited now in the industry.
I think what we've learned, not just as a utility, but just in the world, is that you can teach people technology. You can't teach them to be a good person. You can't teach them to like you, really. You can't teach them those soft skills. And so if we can get those people, it doesn't matter what their degree is. I used to work at Accenture, and they had this model. We hired geology majors, Japanese majors. We all taught them how to code, because if you're smart, you're capable, you can work together as a team, we can figure out the technology side for you. And I think that's the difference of the changing model of our industry, is there's just not enough of them to go around, and we're all poaching from each other. And so how do we say, let's hire the person and not the resume? I think that's the biggest difference in our utility and our business. Is the resume is good, having experience is good, but can you work well with others? Can you communicate effectively? Do you write well? Writing skills are hugely important, you would think, but it's oftentimes hard to find these employees that have that. We'll teach you the energy side, we'll teach you the technology side. There's a lot of boot camps out there, but there's not a boot camp as to really how to be an effective team member. We try and we train, and so that's what we look for. We look for the values and the heart of that person, and we'll teach you the rest.
Yeah, I think maybe adding or giving a slightly different strategy that we look into is when you look at a technology or some type of a program that you really need to deploy, you can say, well, where are we going to get the resources for that? And then that's when you need to look and say, well, this is a great opportunity. So I think being strategic to say, this is somebody that I'm going to actually take out of their current role and assign them. A lot of this is listening to your employees too. You really get some sense of I make it a habit that every 6 months I sit down with my staff and I say, where do you want to go? Listening to them. So you're catching those clues, but we have made those type of specific assignments where you say, okay, this is a 2-year assignment. Our deployment of our ADMS was an opportunity to say we're going to actually pull employees out to run that program. They're going to be relieved of their day-to-day operational responsibilities, and they're going to be moved into that. And you can only imagine they got a kick out of it. I mean, the people you assigned to it to do that level of a deployment was just it was a once in a lifetime. That's how they view it. It's really not once in a lifetime, but that was the start of it. And by the way, as you've invested into them and they see that you value that, there is some sense of loyalty. I do agree with what Nancy's saying. They may be with you only 5 years, and that may be the way it works out, but a lot of them appreciate the fact, hey, when there was an opportunity for me to grow professionally, they gave me that opportunity. And that's what so many of them really want and look for, and I think that's an easy tool for us to go off and do.
And that triggered something in my mind, although it doesn't directly get to your question. But one of the trends we certainly see across the utility industry are creation of new positions, but in particular strategy positions, or in some cases they're labeled innovation-related positions. And I definitely see a trend, and it's almost always somebody within the utility currently that gets pulled out of something else that they were focused on to be put in this role. And almost always, those individuals, as you sit down and talk with them, have this immense amount of curiosity about how the industry is changing, personal curiosity. So every one of them, I mean, probably everyone that I've talked to has said, I personally made the decision to go out and either put solar on my home, or I bought an electric vehicle, or I've put in an energy management system in my house. Like, not because the job says I have to, but because I'm personally curious about how all of this stuff works, and I want to understand what's going through the minds of customers. And that's what makes them, I think, a really strong person within a utility to lead the efforts to figure out, okay, how is innovation going to impact our business? What should our strategy look like going forward?
Yeah. So I want to open it up for Q&A. Do we have any questions out in the audience?
So coming up through college, young people are used to software that's intuitive, that's simple, it's enjoyable. And often when they get into the workforce, there's this jarring difference, right? So you've got people that are used to the traditional system that are retiring, that can move through it very easily. How do you work with design thinking people to change the experience of your traditional software so that these people can have their full potential very quickly and work very hard right off the bat?
So I'll take first stab at that. You know, we're part of National Information Solutions Cooperative. It's a NISC software platform that's probably in place at over 600 co-ops around the country. That is a co-op of co-ops out of St. Louis. We participate throughout the year in users groups and a large users work group where our team actually gets to work with other co-ops around the nation and some municipal systems that are part of that network, and basically work with the vendor on actually creating the punch list of the next things that need to be done in the software platform. And that includes a lot of analytics and a lot of technology that's been brought to bear on taking the kind of the traditional approach, which can be at times those can be a little clunky, and moving that into a user-specific, user-defined environment based on eye movements, based on movement of the mouse and the cursor, and even doing some analytics on timing and how long our staff spends on individual screens. So we're very fortunate to be part of a technology enterprise solution where we actually have a really strong say in what the next iteration and the next revision of that software is going to look like.
And that's what I would say at SMUD is, you know, there was a different design philosophy back then. It wasn't so useful, you know, user-friendly. The UIs weren't fun. And so as we move forward to upgrade our systems, we're bringing in the people in the business, and we're bringing in the users to help define those requirements up front. And we're not willing to switch until, you know, we find that solution. And so we found that we've homegrown many of our solutions ourselves because we realized it has to be usable. It has to be easy. And when it's not, there's that blank face, and it just goes whoop, and the shields go up, and they go, why are you doing it this way? And then it's the immediate, this is so archaic, why? Well, so we realize that it takes all sorts of backgrounds and voices to help with software development, to help with our systems, and that's what we're going through now, is saying we need full teams of people that will touch the system in all different ways, from, you know, the front end or the back end of reporting, because we need to have usable systems that are effective and robust. And so we really have found that getting those ideas from the people that just graduated and have their fresh concepts in their head, those are the ones that are going to help us shape forward, you know, our technology and our systems that, you know, we'll need to run.
Yeah. Next question.
Hi, I work in social media for Zpryme. I had the opportunity to talk with Nancy a little bit about this on Monday, but I'm just curious what you think with the basic level of media literacy that my generation and future generations come with these days. What role in the future of marketing, branding, and community involvement do you think the next generation of people in this industry bring?
I'll just jump in to say I think it's obvious that it's significant. You know, it's interesting. I was talking to some folks. I was in Minnesota speaking at another conference this week, and I was telling them that we're getting outages through Twitter. It's like people aren't calling us; they're tweeting. They're giving us a tweet. Is that what you call it? A tweet? Right? I'm sorry, just kidding. I'm doing. So You're giving us, and so it's like we have to respond to that. I mean, that's how they're letting us know they have an outage and all. Now, quite honestly, our technology is to let us know that we know they're out, but that is no doubt we're going to engage in a lot of different ways. And you got to recognize too, we've got legacy, meaning you've got some folks that still want, a paper bill, or they still want a phone call, they still want to talk to somebody. But it's really great comment, and that's part of this diversification of our workforce, is that we need people that understand that and even get the why behind it and really connect how we would deliver something different and all. So I find that to be kind of obvious in my
And I would say, and we talked earlier this week because I was a prolific tweeter, and that's what I think our generation expects. We don't want to wait for the video to come out online or to read the newsletter when this is all done. I want to see what are the quotables. I want that fast fire information because there's just so much out there. So if I can get on Twitter and to find out about outages, or I can tweet. I mean, for example, I mentioned our power outage. Our online outage management system went down. We had too many users on it. We thought we tested it, robust testing, but we didn't. And so, our team being able to respond to the thousands of people tweeting us, and on Facebook, we're on Instagram. We have Instagram contests, for best holiday lights. I mean, we hit it from all angles because we realize we can't just do one mode of information anymore, and it's expected. Like, I will never call anybody if I can email or tweet them or chat them online. I do not want to call AT&T when I have a problem. Yeah. And I think that's the next generation. We don't want to pick up the phone anymore. I'm on conference calls.
My six-year-old last week was sending me text messages from iPad. I'm like, my 6-year-old is texting me? What is going on?
It's a different expectation from people, and as a utility and as companies, we have to realize that we have to have team members trained and ready to go, because social media is, it is a talent, it's a nuance. And we have to have people that can communicate effectively in 100 characters and reach out to people with those sound bites to get them engaged. And it will be a challenge because that's not how a lot of people communicate, but that's how the next generation will communicate. And so we have to be prepared and be ready to tweet up a storm when needed.
I know that there are questions left, but the screen is flashing red at us. We're out of time, but I do encourage you to approach the panelists after this to address any of your questions. Can I get everybody to join me in a round of applause to thank you guys? Thank you for being here.